Hey guys, welcome to the second part of our airplane assignment lab. In this one, what we needed to do was to create an enum, which would make our code a bit cleaner. So before we get started on that, make sure you tested out your code. Make sure you tested out all states changing to different states. So let's say, what if I start engine and then I try to increase? Can I do that? Or do I need to start engine and then I decrease? Can I do that? Can I start engine, fly, take off, and then stop engine? Can I do that? Right? Do all the variation to make sure your code actually works correctly. Remember, the biggest thing that happens in real life is your code doesn't work, bugs happen, and your clientele, your users, move on to a different thing. And this is really important. This is why we get paid so much, is to make sure that our code is clean and that we keep the clientele that's there. They're happy with our code. Nothing ever bugs out. Nothing ever hurts them, etc. So having that done, we're going to go with one of our goals, and that's to make our code much cleaner. To do this, we noticed a couple things. We had 3 of these booleans that happen based on the state of the airplane. However, if you've noticed by now, one interesting thing is none of these 3 things can happen at the same time. Well, they could, but hear me out. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the exploded. If the engine is exploded, right? If the airplane is exploded, well, there's no possible way you could ground or turn on the engine or off. You can't fly it, you can't turn on the engine, you can't turn it off. None of those will be possible if this happens. Okay, so this one already being the airplane being exploded is unique, meaning that only it can be by itself, nothing else. So that's the first thing, explosion, right? So if exploded, nothing else can happen. So if true, right, nothing else can happen. If false, so if this is not exploded, well, there could be a couple things. There could either be the engine is on, or this other variable, which is if it's on the ground or in flight. Now, logically, if we think about this, can you fly if the engine is not on? Right? If we're on the ground, you could turn off. So let's do another one here. Grounded or flying, whichever one you want to call it off. Grounded. I can't spell. Grounded. Now, if we are grounded, it's the only time that the engine's value can be switched on or off. So this could be on, let's put it, or off. True or false, yeah, again. If we're not grounded, meaning we're in the air, what does happen to the engine? Well, if we are not grounded, so we're in the air, well, the engine must be on. There's no other way. If the engine is not on, it's not possible for us to be in the air. And if we are in the air and we turn off the engine, well, everyone's going to die. So it's not possible to turn off the engine during flight. It could be possible in the future. Maybe accidents happen, the engine turns off, and we're going to have to turn it on before it's too late. But logically, you would never want to turn off the engine of your airplane while flying, do you? It's too much of a risk to your life to ever do this. So with this logic, you kind of see that you really can only be one thing at a time. If we're not grounded, if we're flying, well, the engine for sure it's on, and grounded will be false, right? If we're exploded, well, none of these things could happen, right? If we're not exploded, well, grounded will be determining things. If we're grounded, well, then the engine is what really matters. Is the engine on so that we could get off the ground? Whoops. Or is the engine off and we really can't do anything, then stay on the ground? Noticing that all of these are connected together, what we could do is create something called an enum. Let me just go ahead and erase some of this stuff. What this enum will do is it will keep one of these states on at all times. So to do this, you could create an enum outside of your class, airplane class, or you could create it inside our class, knowing that only this class will have access or utilize it. As that might not be the case, I'd rather we put it outside for now. And later on, we'll talk about inner classes later. So again, we're going to right click on airplane, new, and we're going to create a Java class. We're going to call this something relatable. So here I like to say airplane status, and we're going to go and switch it to enum. Now, so far we only learned the basics of enums, but this is good enough. What enums allows us to do is to give values to airplane status, this type that we're creating. It's again another class. We could basically replicate anything you see here inside the enum. And enum just has an extra thing which gives it values. So these values are like exploded. You could put it all in one line. I like to do one line at a time. It's okay. We have the files, just make it cleaner. That's our goal. So we got exploded. Then afterwards we said it's based on if we're in the ground or if we're flying. We could say, let's say in the case of grounded, well, let's say one thing. So we have exploded, and then we have engine on. The moment the engine is on, we're allowed to fly. So there's also engine off, right? These are states of our airplane that could be. Now, if the engine is on, this is the moment we could fly. So rather than saying grounded, which basically means the engine is either off or on, we don't know, I would rather we say flying, because that's the moment we're above ground, and that's the moment where you cannot turn off engine. In this case, flying sounds a bit better than grounded, and I like that, right? So the engine, the status of the airplane will start off. We're on the ground. For us to go flying, first the engine needs to be on, so we turn on the engine. Now the status is engine's on. Then we need to fly for us to be able to increase or decrease our altitude. So then we go to flying. From flying, we cannot get to engine off because we're flying. The moment we're not flying, we're back to engine on, right? So the moment we're grounded, we could just say engine on, right? If we want to, we could make something a bit more interesting. We could say engine on, grounded. So the status tells us more about it than just, engine is on, right? So this is a pretty cool steps because it helps us figure out what we need. I'm going to just go and put this like this state. So it starts with exploded, engine off. From engine off, we could turn on the engine, but we're still grounded. And the moment that we fly, the engine is obviously on. We could specify it here. Could even say engine on flying. But to be honest, by logic, by normal sense, we can't fly if our engine is off. So maybe sometimes having too much information is not too good. So I'm just going to keep it as flying. And again, this will be based on you guys for your naming sense, whatever makes more sense to you and your team. So having that definition of our enum, airplane status, we could come back here. The altitude we're not going to touch, and these warning stuff we're not going to touch for now. What we're going to do is create a new private variable, which is going to be called airplane status. And I just like to say status here. You could say the full thing airplane status, but we are part of the airplane class, right? So if we look in our main, we're going to say airplane dot status, we're not going to say airplane dot airplane status to get the values, right? And there seems, because I moved the previous assignment here, this thing kind of messed up a little bit. We're going to erase this part, and we're going to specify here. There we go. What did I do? Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a brain fart. Why am I not getting my stuff? All right. Oh, we don't need anything. Okay, we're inside the package airplane. We don't need to import anything. We have access to everything. Okay, there we go. So coming back to where we were. So I have the status. Now I want to remove these three things. So let's go ahead and do the first one, and then you're going to see it's going to be much more cleaner. And not only are we going to use the enums, we're going to use other things to help us out. So the first thing is convert this into this enum. So this time it's going to be a bit harder because we're going to say, so in this case, we're checking if it's exploded. So we're going to say status equal. Notice the IntelliSense should pop up. If it doesn't, do control space. And you could see the values it could take, right? There's static fields. So we have the field thing and these little things to represent, I believe, static or something like that. So over here, we're going to say airplane status engine off. Static fields? No, they're not static fields. Sorry. They're final fields. So the top thing is final. And I think the square represents, I forgot what this little symbol represents. If someone looks it up, let me know. So anyway, not to waste too much time, we wanted to know if it's exploded. So we're going to select this one, press enter. So if the status equals exploded, we're going to do that. Over here, we're saying not the engine is on. So the engine, if it's not on, so here we're going to say status equals, and we have engine off, right? So not on means basically the engine is off. And here we start the engine. And this is pretty much our code being changed. Some of you might just say, well, it's not more readable. Well, it's not bad. Let's try something else. We're going to do a switch. We're going to do our status. And inside of this, we're going to create some case. And you could see the cases being shown by the IntelliSense. The first one is exploded, as always. This is the newer switch. We're not going to utilize it yet. And we're going to do a break. We have the case for exploded. It's pretty easy. When it's exploded, show this, break, get out of this. The next state. So you can see the three states that are remaining: flying, engine off, engine on ground. And in this one, we're trying to start the engine. So I usually like to put the good one at the end. So in this case, I'm going to say engine is off. What should we do? We have it right here. Well, that was the good case. We're going to come back with the other ones. And also we're going to put a break. So you could already see that these two F statements are taken care of. Before engine on, we have flying and engine is on the ground. In both of these cases, the engine is already on. So we could say case flying, and we could say case engine on ground. And at that moment, we could say this. Break. So notice that in both of these cases, it will come and say the engine is already on, break. And in the case of exploded, it's exploded. Pretty straightforward, break. In the case of engine off, we're actually going to turn on the engine, and we're gonna print this out. And by the way, this is not our engine on anymore. This is replaced with status equals control space, and we're gonna say, why am I not seeing my stuff? Started. We're looking for engine on. I don't know what's going on with the thing. There we go. Right, and we turned on the engine. We could have also put these ones inside our default. I rather not, because if ever new setting comes in, the default will take over and we might make a mistake, but a mistake in the future. Does that make sense? We're avoiding it by not putting that default, which will take the else case. The same way we did it here, this is really bad, because if ever there's a new status, we would get messed up. This wasn't bad when we had 3 variables, because each one of them were specific to one thing. It would be bad when we have only one variable, which is for all of them. So anyway, coming back to here, we could put a default case for in case something happens. Let's say to do error here, something went wrong. We could even do system.out as we were doing. Something went wrong, wrong status. Right? Better message would probably be the status is not taken care of or something like that. And that's pretty much it. And now if you look at this and if you look at this, you'll notice that the switch is much cleaner than if we had this if and else's. Because in the switch, we know we're just taking care of the status, and based on that status, exploded, etc., we would do one of the following things. And this, I think, would be much more powerful. So here we could come and erase this. And something nice is this status, we could replicate it in everything. So we're going to go do the same thing, switch status, open the curlies, case exploded. What do we want to do in exploded? We want to grab this, put it that, and we're going to put a break. Control Shift L to clean up our code a bit. So this exploded is done. Then we have engine is on and is grounded. Sorry for the little red. We're going to fix that in a second. So here we have the engine is on and it's grounded. So now if you look at the case, we have engine on grounded. And we could grab, copy those, put it there, put a little break. Remember, we don't have this engine on false. So this one would be status equals. So the engine is off. Why am I not seeing them anymore here? I see 2 of them, 3. For some reason, it's messing up. Engine off. And we could erase that. What else case do we have here? We have an else if it's not grounded. So this is grounded. Case we're flying. Break. And lastly, we have the case else, which is saying airplane error, engine already off. So case engine off, and we put that there. And again, a break, and we could again put something for default. Right? And we could do this again for everything. So you could see our feedbacks are getting better because we're taking care of every case, and our code is getting much cleaner because when we come to check for stop engine, when we want to do the action stop engine, we check the status and determine what the status is. And this one, engine on ground, is what will change our thing, right? So anyway, let's keep on going. So again, you know what? We could just do a little copy of this, paste that in there. So how can we take off? If it's exploded, we have exploded. Good. If the engine is on, then that's the moment we could do all of this. So I'm going to grab that. Engine on. Put that in there. So we need to change the status to is grounded. Engine on grounded. Wait, that doesn't make sense. If the engine is on, what are we doing? We're taking off. Sorry. So if the engine is on, what we're doing is we're taking off. So this should be flying. It's because I changed the wording from grounded to flying. It became a bit weird. Did I make a mistake here? Status, engine on ground, engine off. This is good. Okay. So if it's on ground, we're changing to flying. Flying. This message is not good. So we cannot fly if the engine is off. So this message should be here. And what are we else missing? We got flying here. So airplane error, already flying. So again, we're giving them more feedback, and we could erase these. And let's go ahead and do the next one. So you could see it's pretty much the same thing. The only thing you had to do with enums was basically switch it to this. The messages will come back again. In this case, we're increasing altitude. So we can only do that when we're flying. So this whole thing over here is going to happen when we're flying. So flying. Just make sure you copy paste, you're not making mistakes because you're switching to a switch. Here is when the engine is not off. When the engine is off. So here, engine off. We're just gonna change it to that. And here we're grounded. Which one's grounded? This one. So we can't increase when we're on the ground. Now, something I like to do is to make sure that these error messages is consistent from one to the other. So if you get the same message, engine is off, you say the same thing rather than changing it every time for every different action. Anyway, that's something of preference, so I'm not going to enforce it. But let's see now. So we're increasing altitude. Altitude gets increased. We specify it. Good. Here by 1000, we could specify the rate. Pretty good. The current altitude, this line over here, line 108. And here, what are we doing? Now we're checking the new status. So if we reached an exploding status, we want to change it to exploded. Status equals exploded. And over here, if we're in the warning, we want to just show the warning. Here we got a maximum. I don't like to have those magic numbers. I probably forgot to do it. We only have two values, 10,000 and 12,000. So what we could do is change the message so this magic number is gone. Max altitude supported is 11,000. We could, rather than saying that, we could say airplane warning. Airplane will explode at, and here we could say exploding altitude. So we could erase the magic number that we talked about last time. And this is fine for now. We could have even put that somewhere else. We'll come back to it. Well, this is fine. So we're just going to copy this and put it inside our decrease. In the case of decrease, you'll notice explode is the same. The only real difference is now if our altitude reaches 0, we want to ground it. So here, we're going to replace this part. Altitude 0, we want to make our status grounded and the engine is on. Okay, what else we need to do? We got to make sure that our altitude is decreasing and not increasing. So really just this little thing over here. To be honest, it's just a minus here. So we're just going to do that. Okay, this looks nice. Erase. And you can see it's a lot of repetition code and we should eventually take that out. But for now, this is perfect. Cool. Last thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our code works. So we go in our main and we test it out. So I'm getting some warnings because my code, again, I copy paste the previous correction here. Let's go run it. So now, one thing I'm noticing from your files that you're giving me, you don't really fully test it out, and this is bad. Remember, testing is really necessary here. So first thing we do is always try the things that we can do. So, well, wrong numbers, good. I tried to take off. You see, I got an issue here. So again, always test out. We got a null pointer exception. Null pointer exception means basically our object doesn't exist at line 75. So status is not set. No, I forgot to set the status, the default value. In this case, we're going to set it to engine off, right? The default set. Actually, I forgot to take off these 3 booleans. We don't need them anymore. And because we took off those 3 booleans, this getter doesn't work anymore. We don't need them. What we could do is create a getter for our status. So generate getter for now a status. So here we could, outside from our class, we could read it, but we can't modify it. And we make sure there's no errors. I see a few warnings, a few green stuff. It's okay. Run it again. Okay, so take off. Cool. Stop engine. engine's already off. Increase, engine is currently off. Decrease, engine is currently off. Okay, I start the engine. Can I increase? No. Currently grounded, good. Decrease, currently grounded, good. Can I stop the engine? Cool. Can I stop again? Engine is already off. Good. Start engine, take off. I'm at 1000. Can I stop the engine? Cannot stop while flying. Good. Can I start the engine? Engine is already on. Increase. Stop the engine. Good. Take off. It's already flying. Start the engine is already on. Good. So it seems to be working. Decrease and decrease. We landed successfully. Can I increase now that I landed? No. Can I decrease now that I landed? No. Can I take off again? Yes. Okay, good. So you see, I'm testing out every scenario that's possible. And we make sure that it's doing as expected. Cool. At 10,000, I reach danger zone. Can I decrease? Yes. Can I increase and I get the same warning? Yes. At 11,000, I still get the warning. And at 12,000, we're going to explode. Now that we're exploded, let's try some of those buttons. Increase? No. Decrease? No. Stop engine? No. Take off? No. And lastly, start the engine? No. Notice I'm not exiting, but I'm giving feedback of what's going on. The airplane is exploded. We need to do something. The user needs to do something, not you. Lastly, exit. And that's what the user does, and we're good to go. So this was lab 2. See you guys in the next one.